We are back up here in the gear loft talking again about how to make your backpacking experience cheaper. We get a lot of comments, a lot of feedback about, how do you make backpacking cheaper? How do you make the whole experience cheaper? Not even talking about gear or anything like that. Let's talk about equipment first. And equipment is probably going to be where you drop the most amount of money at first. The biggest thing we can tell you all is to buy a lot of your stuff used at first. And it makes sense, even when you're starting out, you might not love backpacking, or it might not be something you do all the time. So you don't want to drop a ton of money on a ton of brand new nice gear. So we always recommend buy used gear if you can at first. We buy a lot of our stuff used, and we sell a lot of our stuff too. There's a lot of good places you can get used gear. We have a video on the REI garage sale. I always think that's a really good place to at least check out your big three, or maybe a sleeping pad. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the garage sale. Watch that video, but REI sells their gently used stuff for like stupid cheap. And we always pick up stuff there, but I've always thought that's a good place to at least get your big three or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that every year new gear gets released, and people who are really into the hobby want to change out stuff, so it creates a huge used gear market. And a lot of backpacking gear is bomb proof and lasts for years, so there's just so much out there, and you just got to take the time to figure out where it all is.
Specifically, when we're talking about used gear, I think good things to get used are your pack. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
If you're a hammock camper, or you sleep on the ground, I think a sleeping pad or an underquilt is a good thing to get used. An underquilt it never touches your body. Like it won't get gross really. I think tents are a good thing to get used. They're pretty bomb proof. I would probably get a new sleeping bag. That's probably the one thing I would probably get new. Or I don't know.
I don't care.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, high quality sleeping bags and quilts generally don't lose much value, especially the cottage industry ones, so you're probably not going to find too many stellar deals on those.
Yeah.
So it might be worth it just to buy new, but I personally wouldn't be afraid of buying a used one if it was the one I was looking for. There's lots of great places to get used gear. Some popular forums out there, Backpacking Light, I've used that for years. Hammock forums. There's tons of different Facebook groups that are always advertising. People post up their used gear. I've seen stuff on Craigslist too.
Yeah.
But you just gotta start looking around to it. Get involved with some backpacking related forums, and they always have like some type of marketplace where you can people are selling stuff constantly. I've bought religiously used gear for years, and discounted gear too, like Sierra Trading Post,
Steep and Cheap,
Gear Trade. Those are all great places to get discounted gear, or I think Gear Trade actually has used gear too, so check all those places out when you're looking for good deals. Another great place to save money is clothing. Like, I think nowadays clothing is a dime a dozen. You just need something synthetic and works for you. There's so many different places out there. You can spend all the money on the great clothing, and don't get me wrong, like we do have some expensive clothing, but Costco, Walmart, Target, all have synthetic lines of clothing that work fine for hiking.
Yeah, for hiking.
We have our beloved Costco hiking pants that we wear all the time. So don't feel like you have to go get the newest and greatest clothing from Patagonia, Arc'teryx, all the big name brands. You can save tons of money on clothing. I don't know, me personally, I probably wouldn't buy used clothing unless it was like a very specific item that might be hard to find or something like that, because clothing is so cheap and it's readily available.
Yeah.
Just get something synthetic that works for you. Don't feel like you have to drop tons of money on clothing. It's available everywhere.
Lastly, another easy way to save money on gear specifically is to DIY some of it. camping especially, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can make yourself, specifically stoves. People DIY their own quilts. People DIY their own tarps. You can like buy the raw materials. I don't know what else.
I've made my own pots before.
And koozies you can make.
Yeah.
So anything cookware related, you can make it yourself, and you can save a ton of money if you make it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's something to look into. Personally, like I've only made a koozie. We've made stoves, just little things like that. But people go nuts with it and make quilts and stuff like that. So look into making stuff yourself.
Yeah, there's lots of free patterns in online that you can download for packs, quilts, tarps, and then a lot of like the cottage manufacturers as well will sell the materials at good prices. Yeah. You can buy bulk down, make your own sleeping bags and under quilts. So if you are good at that type of stuff, which we are not. You can save yourself a ton of money.
If you know how to use a sewing machine,
yeah,
you can save a lot of money.
Additionally, things that we commonly see that you can save a lot of money on are water bottles.
Yeah, you don't need to. Yeah,
I mean,
water.
Yeah, we don't get me wrong. We love the cool Nalgene bottles too, but they're heavy and expensive. And just get your Gatorade bottles and your Smart Water bottles or whatever, your Mountain Dew bottles. and they're light, they cost nothing, and they're reusable. And when it gets gross, just recycle it.
Another thing I see a lot of people spend a lot of money on is camping stoves, and we talked about it before. But even if you're gonna get a canister style stove, like you can go on Amazon and you can get like the BRS titanium stove for like $10. So and it's a great stove. So if you're going to canister stove, there's no reason to spend. Even though I have a Pocket Rocket, which is like $40 or $50, go get a $10 BRS titanium one, or better yet, go get a 65-cent can of cat food and make your own alcohol stove.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really looking to save money, there's no need to spend $60 to $100 on a nice canister stove when there are ones that are much cheaper and lighter and that work great.
Moving away from equipment, let's talk about consumables. So anything you eat, drink, use on the trail. For starters, obviously, saving money on food. Buy a dehydrator and dehydrate your own backpacking food. We have tons of videos talking about it. And then secondary to that is shop wholesale. Costco man over here, buy your food wholesale and then dehydrate it. So like for instance, last year Andy made a ton of beef jerky. We have a video on that. And you bought it at Costco, right? You bought the meat wholesale at Costco.
Like half a cow.
Yeah.
Dehydrated.
Beef jerky is very expensive actually for what it is.
It's very labor intensive.
It's very labor intensive. So for starters, look into dehydrating your own food. You can buy a solid dehydrator for like $60-$70 on Amazon. Buy the food you dehydrate at wholesale, or your backpacking food at wholesale. I don't know what, like instant coffee we got it at Costco. What else?
Are we talking about Costco
yeah,
specifically?
Anything wholesale that you eat.
Like ground beef, ground turkey.
Yeah. What about like trail food, like snacks?
Oh, they got all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all cheaper. And then additionally, this is a great tactic too. Say you cook dinner one night and you have a bunch of leftovers.
I've been doing this.
Just throw it on the dehydrator.
Yeah. So we had a bunch of food that was going bad in my fridge, like vegetables and random stuff, and just throw that stuff in the dehydrator and then just stick it in your freezer. That's actually a really good tactic.
Yeah.
This is something we bring up in like all our videos, but when it comes to things like Mountain House and Backpacker's Pantry, buy them in bulk in the number 10 can. Portion them up or just throw it on a freezer bag and throw it in your freezer. You can bring the cost of those meals from like $6, $7, $8 a meal to like $2, $3 a meal. So if you're gonna go the prepackaged backpacking meals like that, look into buying them in bulk. Like prepping websites will have them, or Amazon has it, and then just throw it in your freezer because they'll last forever. The closing kind of thought here is something that's actually going to be contradictory to basically everything we've just talked about. There is some thought that should be put into the phrase, buy once, cry once. And there is stuff you should just bite the bullet and spend money on up front in terms of quality, because it will last forever.
But if you think about it, that does make it affordable.
It makes it cheaper in the long run, yeah. For sure. Things that I think you should spend money on are basically things that keep you alive and warm, I think.
I also think shoes probably go in
Shoes is another good one. an example is I have a R1 pullover that I still use to this day that is 14 years old. Allie's Montbell sleeping bag that I bought from Andy, I have no idea how old that is.
That thing is old. I bought that used off Backpacking Lake
yeah,
years
and if
ago.
you wash it well and you take care of it, like buy once, cry once. It's gonna be different for everybody what you should just spend a lot of money on. You know, we think stuff that keeps you warm, shoes. You should just make the investment up front because there is a quality over quantity type of thing here. And if you can have a sleeping bag for 15, 20 years that costs twice as much, it's better to buy that than buying a bunch of sleeping bags over 10 to 15 years. But I don't know if we can say specifically items. For me, it's like things that keep you warm and alive, and shoes is a good one.
Yeah, you'll have to figure out what you want to spend the most money on, but like Kevin said, gear that keeps you alive is probably where
That's
you
where you should start.
Where you should start and invest the most money in. For me, I'm one of those picky people when it comes to packs, so I like to invest the money on a good pack that I know that's going to fit well. Other people, they can just put on a pack and go.
Yeah.
If you're on a certain budget, you might want to allocate a large portion of that budget to stuff that keeps you alive.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. I guess the overall point is you don't have to have all the fancy, expensive stuff right away. And, you know, backpacking can be very expensive, but there's also ways to do it a lot cheaper. And, you know, you can save money in certain places that allows you to just get out there and go. So, as always, like, subscribe, whatever. Check us out on Instagram. I don't know. Yeah, comment below. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to everybody later.